Welcome back to another episode of Unscripted. My name is Emily Rosca, and I'm the managing editor at the Loyola Phoenix.
I'm Lucas Staber, and I'm a movie reviewer at the Phoenix.
In this week's episode of Unscripted, we are reviewing Hustlers, which came out last Friday.
I was born to flex, diamonds on my neck. I like boarding jets, I like more than sex, but nothing in this world that I like more than checks. All I really want to see is that I don't really need a D, I need the.
So it's based on a 2015 New Yorker article called The Hustlers That Scores by
Jessica Presley, I think.
Yeah, that's right, Jessica Presley. And basically the film is based on this true story about these strippers who started drugging and robbing people at surrounding bars, then bringing them back to the strip clubs to rob them. And basically pay all their bills and, you know, live these extravagant lifestyles, but also just to cope with the financial recession of 2008.
So the film then starts out with Constance Wu's character, Dorothy. So she is a new stripper at this strip club where she then meets Jennifer Lopez.
Who plays Ramona?
Yes, she plays Ramona, who's the club's, like, highest earning stripper.
Yeah.
And the star of like all the shows, basically.
Yeah, like the biggest earner, yeah. So she gets the most time on stage, I think is how it works.
She meets Ramona one night after the show. She like goes up to smoke with her on the roof, and they become like buddy-buddy. I actually thought that scene was like, to me it felt kind of forced because I was expecting Ramona's character to be a little more hostile, just being such a like center of that strip club. I was expecting her to just be like, who is this newbie, like just wanting to make it in this strip club, so now she's just gonna come to me for help. But it actually turned out to be kind of like a mother hen type situation, even the way she like enveloped her in her like giant fur coat.
Yeah.
How come you're so good? I see you with every single kind of guy, and I don't know, it's like you have them all figured out.
I guess I'm just a people person.
No, see, I see what you're saying, but I actually kind of like that because I think that the like hostile, like top stripper who's just like rough on the new person, like that's kind of like a trope that's sort of, you know, is kind of associated with stripping and like.
Well, and that's exactly what I was expecting.
Right, and I think it's kind of the first time that the movie like fully subverts our expectations for that, and I kind of like that because that's so much of what makes the movie great, is that it chooses to, you know, portray strippers in a positive light, and so you don't have like the bratty like competition that you'd expect. Instead, it's almost like, it's more like mafia brothers than it is like any kind of competitive work environment, like the strip club. Like they're all part of one big family and they all look out for each other, you know?
Yeah.
And so I kind of found that interesting, and I think it's the first time we see what Jennifer Lopez is kind of going for with her role. Like she's this really like confident, brave, you know, really successful stripper, but she's also like fully willing to share all her tips and tricks. Like she wants everyone to make money, not just her.
Going into this movie, like full disclosure, had zero idea what we were sitting down for. I truly did not know what it would be about. So I guess they set that up very well, and they started building up to that, I feel like, way at the beginning when they like just started tag teaming everything, because they started doing were they doing shows together, but they started working together like within the strip club and doing their business together.
Right, yeah.
And so then when the recession hit in 2008, they lost touch because they went their separate ways, like trying to find different jobs.
Well, no, because Ramona stays a stripper. She just...
No, but they lost touch.
Right, because Dorothy leaves to get a new job. She wants to get into the workplace, and then she can't get into anything because she has no experience.
Hilarious interview.
Right,
she like goes to interview with this really high-end, like a department store.
Yeah.
And so she's sitting there talking to the hiring manager, and she's like, well, do you have any retail experience? And she's like, oh, you know, I've like sees like multiple like strip clubs on the resume. She's like, oh, you know, mostly bartending.
Yeah. I sold beer.
Sold beer. And she's like, well, we're looking for people with retail experience. And she's like, well, how is this any different than like serving beer?
Right, yeah.
So that was funny. So once they start their hustling business, they bring on some of the old pals from the strip club and enlist their mom, who was the manager of sorts at the strip club they worked, and she was the one that was swiping the cards.
So, I mean, yeah, like the posse that they kind of assemble just has like really great chemistry. Because they have, you know, it's a lot of big names that you wouldn't really expect to see in something like this. Like for me, the biggest surprise was that Lily Reinhart is in this.
Oh, I know.
Because like I only know her from Riverdale, and she's not exactly like a huge part in this, but she is like a really talented, like emotive actress. And so it's like interesting to see these bit parts being given to like good actresses. And it is relevant too that like the cast is pretty much entirely women.
Oh, the only men in this movie are the ones that are being ripped off.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and Dorothy's like part-time like boyfriend who ends up leaving her when the recession hits. Yeah, I think that that's really like where the strength of the movie is. I mean, Jennifer Lopez gives the best performance she's given probably ever, and definitely at least since Selena. But she's just incredible in this. It reminds me of Robert De Niro in Goodfellas. Like that's always what I think of when I'm thinking back to her performance. But you know, she really just brings this like interesting cast of characters together. Like Lizzo and Cardi B play these little bit roles in it, and they only really get a couple scenes total, like each, but in each of those scenes, like Jennifer Lopez is like so doting on them and like so inclusive of them in the conversation that there's just this great like vibe and chemistry that comes from it. And you kind of feel like I don't know this from any source or anything, but like if that stuff was improv, I would not be surprised because it's very realistic. And you know, Cardi B being like a former stripper, like she would know. And everyone feels very like comfortable in their roles.
Cardi B just has her, I mean, yes, she was a stripper, so that obviously there's that aspect to it, but also just her like, I just feel like she's being 100% herself in that movie, just kind of like you were saying.
Absolutely.
Like
yeah.
she's just that super like insane in a good way. Like, how do you describe Cardi B?
She's over the top. She's extravagant. Yeah.
And so I love that they kept their personalities in there. And even Lily Reinhart's character, she was kind of the more...
She's like such a ditz.
Yeah, she is a little klutzy, and she plays that role so well. And they do just kind of seem like themselves, like their actual personalities.
These are my sisters. Hi, Ramona.
I'm Gary.
Gary, nice to meet you.
Annabelle.
Hi.
Isn't he so cute?
Yes.
Hi.
And
Hi, Destiny.
Getting his hair. Can I have 3 shots? Gary, you know who he looks like, don't you?
he looks like Tom Cruise.
No, I'm
Tom
more skinny, more
No. It's your smile.
It is. I thought a little.
It's really good.
I think a lot of that really comes from the director, Lorene Scafaria. I haven't seen all of her work, but I've seen Seeking a Friend for the End of the World. The thing that really stands out to me about both of the ones that I've seen, and particularly Hustlers, is that she really gets these like very human, intimate performances out of the people in her movies. Like you never feel like she comes into a scene just like, okay, like we need to get this plot point across, like let's move on. It's like very much about the dynamics between the characters and very much about getting the actor or actress to like put themselves into their role. And that really is a benefit to a movie like this, because as much as it's this crime movie and this heist movie, like it really is centered around the idea of like giving you an honest, like fair portrayal of how strippers view themselves and like how strippers interact as a group. Showing us characters that are committing crimes and trying to get us to judge them morally, but also trying to get us to like them, it kind of can be ineffective. And with Hustlers, like they don't really try to say like this stuff's fine. All they do is show it to us from the character's perspective. And I don't think that Scafaria, you know, thinks that what they did is necessarily wrong. Like, you know, the men that they're victimizing here, like these aren't necessarily just the greatest guys. Like a lot of them have been abusive and aggressive with the women in the strip clubs before.
Also to mention, the majority of them are like Wall Street brokers.
Right, yeah. And they kind of use the recession to justify that, because these are the guys that they think, you know, were kind of screwing the American people. And so they view it almost as like righteous payback. But you know, the movie doesn't even like frame it that way. They just show it as a thing that these characters were feeling. And I think that's really important, because, you know, if you try to make this too much of a social message, not that it's not an extremely political movie, but trying to be too overt about that specific side of it, you know, over a decade after those events happened, it kind of could make it come off flat. And the way to get people to understand the political things you're going for is to, you know, humanize your characters and get people to relate to them. And I think Hustlers does that really well.
So overall, we liked the movie.
Yeah.
We did.
Very good.
this was our Unscripted about Hustlers. Come back in a couple weeks to get another review, and hopefully next time we won't have all these musical components around us. And to watch more videos from previous seasons and our last episode, you can check out our playlist on YouTube or under the A&E section on the Phoenix's website.